Is it visual?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about it. It's on my calendar, but I didn't get it. I just heard through the grapevine. She is sweet.
I'll tell you what.
She told me you and her were very good.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. We've worked together on cases. And
I know his brother, so I know his brother, which one was loaded.
yeah, yeah, and Craig was in juvenile court for a long time.
Hey, Jack, how are you? So, they haven't told me what how you'd like to be. So I'm hopeful of getting that information from you now. So where are we at here?
Okay. Either one is fine. Sometimes I get confused. But Freddie is not real. That's a New Orleans nigga. And it's stuck. So would you like to born and raised in New Orleans. Started off in the city of private office.
None of these things are surprises to me.
I hear you. Really do.
Good evening. Welcome. Hello, welcome. We're so honored to welcome you to Touro Synagogue. If you would like to come in and take your seats, we're about to get started. On behalf of our entire synagogue community, we welcome you to this sacred space this evening. I'm Rabbi Alexis Burke. and I am the spiritual leader of Touro Synagogue. It's a great honor to have this place open to this experience. There's no question of the centrality of justice in our tradition, and so the beauty of having the conversation about justice and carrying out justice in its purest and most sacred form feels appropriate tonight. And I would just love to offer this opening prayer. We thank you, O God, for many precious gifts, which stubbornly defy the fires that would consume them, for the yearning for liberty, which will not be strangled by the cold chains of tyranny, for the striving for truth, which will not be discouraged by the persistent clamor of falsehood, for the struggle for justice, which will not be defeated by the cruel powers of malice, for the urge to love, which will not be stifled by the cynical call to hate, for the belief in tomorrow, which will not be crushed by the heavy burdens of today, for the will to live, which will not be choked by the rude hands of sorrow, for the power of the Spirit, which will not be conquered by the brute spirit of power, for the faith in you, which will not be uprooted by the chilly winds of despair. For all these precious gifts, we offer thanks to you, the Creator of all. We offer thanks to you for the opportunity for this time together, the gifts of the presence of each and every one of you here this evening. Amen. As we continue the evening, it's my honor to invite forward Ann Rabin of Citizens for One Greater New Orleans.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi Burke and Touro Synagogue, for hosting this evening in this historic and beautiful sanctuary. The 2014 Juvenile and Criminal Court Forum bring together a large and diverse group of sponsoring organizations. We are all invested in ensuring that voters better understand the importance of judicial elections and become better informed about candidates to make educated choices. I want to thank our wonderful and hard-working sponsors, all of whom are listed in the program, including Baptist Community Ministries and the Business Council of New Orleans and the River Region. At this time, I'd like to ask our sponsoring organizations to stand up. They have done a magnificent job. It's my pleasure to introduce this evening's moderator, Lee Zurich, WVUE Fox 8's Chief Investigative Reporter, and also serving as co-anchor on the news desk at 9 and 10. After many years of reporting sports and a post-Katrina switch to news, Lee did us all a favor and entered the investigative career that he holds today. He reported corruption within NOAA. The results were shuttering the agency, 5 guilty pleas, and fresh accountability to the recovery process. Using his rights as an ordinary citizen and technology, Lee pairs public records requests with proficient computer-assisted research to look where nobody has. Series after series, Lee's hard-hitting investigations continue to affect change and garner respect. And I want to read to you the list of Lee's wonderful accomplishments and awards. He's received 2 Peabody Awards, 3 DuPont Silver Batons, 5 National Edward R. Murrow Awards, the IRE Medal, 2 IRE certificates, 3 Sigma Delta Chi Awards, a national headliner, and the Gannett Award for Digital Innovation and Watchdog Journalism. Wow. As a New Orleans native and a graduate of Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Journalism, his position at Fox 8 allows Lee to practice journalism as well as influence the future of our beloved home. We're so pleased that he has accepted the role as moderator tonight. I also want to take an opportunity to introduce any other candidates that may be running for additional judicial seats that may not include criminal court and juvenile court. So Janet Ahern, who's running for family court. I'm asking each of you to give our program and the candidates your full attention. We ask you to silence your cell phones. Before we proceed with our candidates and Lee, I'd like to introduce Josh Perry, Executive Director of Louisiana Center for Children's Rights. He's going to share with you the background on juvenile court and introduce each of our judicial candidates for Section E.
Good evening. I'm Josh Perry. I'm the director of the Louisiana Center for Children's Rights. We're a nonprofit law office that serves as the juvenile public defender in New Orleans. Through our advocacy arm, the Juvenile Justice Project of Louisiana, we've been working for 17 years to reform the juvenile justice system in the state. And I want to submit to you tonight that the best measure of a society's health and morality is how it allocates opportunity to the most vulnerable children that it has, how it helps them to develop in positive ways, and how it responds to them when they've made bad decisions, how it teaches them right from wrong. And the 5 candidates who are sitting here, in addition to Judge Yolanda King, who could not be here tonight, are running to occupy one of what will be, on January 1 of the coming year, 5 seats in Orleans Parish Juvenile Court. The most vulnerable children in the city, children who are accused in delinquency cases, children who are accused in what are called status offender cases. Someone says they're ungovernable, or they've run away from home, or they're truant, and children who are the victims of abuse and neglect will come in front of the 5 judges of the court. And one of the folks sitting here, or Judge Yolanda King, who sadly could not be here tonight, will have the opportunity to work with them. I want to take 2 minutes to give some context on Orleans Parish Juvenile Court and the set of challenges that are going to confront the next judge in that court. This is an important and an interesting time in juvenile justice in New Orleans and across the country. Important because while we've made some progress, we still have a long way to go. Everybody knows that youth violence is a problem in New Orleans. What's less known is that actually since 2008, juvenile arrests are down by 44% in the city, and that even as a fraction of juvenile arrests, violent arrests are down. What everybody does know is that it's clearly not good enough. That last night we lost another child in the city, and that there's a plague of violence that surrounds our children. 1 in 7 young people in New Orleans' middle schools says that they have personally witnessed a murder. And we're letting our children down in a lot of ways. 73% of children in custody in Louisiana have a mental illness. 32% of my office's clients have a special education exceptionality. 12% come to us not even enrolled in school. And so the systems that surround children, vulnerable children in New Orleans, are broken, and those children fall into the juvenile justice system, and we've made progress, but it's not enough. So it's an important time, and it's an interesting time because we know so much more now than we knew 30 years ago about what works and what doesn't work in juvenile justice. 30 years of advances in brain science, of advances in penological theory, of advances in explorations of what services actually make a difference in children's lives, have taught us a lot about the young people who come into juvenile court. They've taught us that children, because their brains are still plastic in important ways, have a unique capacity to change. They've taught us that children have a unique incapacity to make difficult decisions, especially in times of stress. They've taught us that children are actually better off in their homes than in jails and in juvenile justice systems. They've taught us that the juvenile justice system can itself be corrupting, that when you control for everything else, a child who is processed in juvenile court is actually more likely to commit an offense in the future than a child who is not. And so it's that set of knowledge, it's those opportunities that are presented by the new science and the research that's at all of our fingertips now, that's available to judges who come onto the juvenile court bench, and they're asked to make difficult decisions about the safety of our children and the future of our city. So it's important for all those reasons. It's also important because of it will be the job of one of the people who's sitting here today to make decisions not just about how to hold children accountable, but how to hold the broken systems in our society accountable for what has happened to our children, and to be sure that every child has what he or she needs to thrive. And it's a big job, so thank you for coming here tonight to hear them talk about how they would do it. Directly to my left is Jacqueline Carroll Gilds, a lawyer and psychiatric nurse who was an assistant district attorney in Orleans Parish and for 12 years ran a mental health services agency on Broad Street called Bridging the Gap. Next to her, Ernest Freddie Charbonnet, born and raised in New Orleans with more than 30 years of practice, private practice and public service, most recently in the role of appointed council member on the New Orleans City Council. Next to him, Desiree Cook Calvin, an attorney who was drawn to this position and to public service by her experience working with women who've suffered losses to violence in their family through the Household of Faith Church. Next to her is Nikki Roberts, an assistant district attorney with 12 years of practice in New Orleans, most recently as the chief of the district attorney's juvenile division. And next to her, Cynthia Samuels, who has practiced for 23 years in juvenile courts in Orleans Parish and in Jefferson Parish, with almost 2 decades of that coming in front of Judge Conrad in juvenile court in Jefferson Parish. So we so much appreciate your giving this panel your attention and hearing them out as they talk about the challenges that confront us and that confront our children.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Just to let you know, we're going to hear from the juvenile court judges, and then we're going to switch things out and then hear from some of the criminal court judges, judicial candidates as well too. What we're going to do, we're going to ask a series of questions. They're all going to have some time to answer the questions. I just ask the candidates who are up here tonight. First of all, this is an amazing list of organizations who are putting this debate on tonight. I don't think I've ever seen a more impressive list of organizations sponsor one of these before, and I think that's a tribute to everyone putting this together tonight. And because of that, I'll just ask the candidates, you've had your opportunities to get your message out there, what you want to get across. These organizations have taken a lot of time to put some thoughtful questions together, and I hope you will answer those questions and allow your time to answer those questions and not necessarily on the message that you want to get across tonight. So let's begin with our first question. Other than wanting more services for children, if you could change one thing about our juvenile justice system, what would it be? Other than wanting more services for children, if you could change one thing about our juvenile justice system, what would it be? You'll notice right in front of you, candidates, they'll be keeping time, so please keep an eye on that. I'm going to keep it pretty tight. And we'll begin with Ms. Carol Guild. And please move the microphone over to her, please. Yeah.
Services are important for the children. However, hello?
There you go.
Okay.
Why don't you let's do this.
Okay.
Thank you. Services are important for our youth. However, services for the families are also important. Most of our children come from families that are unstable, and the parents need, the mothers and the grandmothers need some type of stability in the home. In addition to finding services for the parents in the home, I would like to explore the grants offered by the United States Department of Justice. There are many grants that are available, like grants for juveniles that are re-entering the community, grants for delinquency preventive services that may be available, because there are a lot of parents out here who are dealing with delinquent children, truant children, disrespectful children who have not entered the criminal justice system yet, but these parents still need help. And so if we could somehow incorporate some preventive services for our youth, that would be something that I would look into. So grants from the United States Department of Justice, which will incorporate some preventive services for our youth.
All right, thank you. Mr. Charbonnet.
Okay, good evening, everyone. What I would like to see changed is I think we need to focus on creating an actual juvenile justice system. And what I mean by that is a system where all the relevant parties, our schools, churches, nonprofits, state agencies, federal agencies, city government, we all work together to create a system that communicates with each other, coordinates, interfaces, moves, and spends resources in unison. We cannot solve problems with one facet of that, such as juvenile court, focusing on trying to solve a problem when something is going wrong or we're doing something wrong in the school system. The pipeline to prison is real. And if there's something that's going on in our schools, for example, that's feeding that, we may be spinning our wheels with the other agencies if there's no communication. I don't see that right now. I know the power of what a system that works can do. I am a product of that. And perhaps through the rest of the evening I can tell you about that, because I know that it works. And that's the only way we're going to put a dent or go where we need to be. So thank you.
All right, Ms. Cook-Calvin.
I would say that yes, services are very important, but I think efficiency is also a big issue. One of the things I think that may help is maybe a weekend court of some sort to deal with issues around the clock, but also the partnerships with the schools, because the suspension rates, expulsion rates are so high. There may need to be some more communication there, direct involvement with the court there.
All right, next, Ms. Roberts. Can you grab that microphone off the stand too, please? Thanks.
Actually, I thought your question was other than services. Is there something that we'd like to change within the system?
Other than wanting more services for
Yes.
children, if you could change one thing about our juvenile justice system, what would it be?
Yeah. Actually, something I'd like to change would be something that would help the families lead. During my experience in juvenile court, unfortunately, we do have kids that have been committed to secure care, and because we have secure care facilities that are really spread out and really far away from New Orleans, it's hard for the families to be able to visit those kids and actually have live in-person visits with those kids. So I'd like to create a better way for those families whose kids have been committed to secure care to be able to actually have in-person visits with those kids, to be able to see those kids one-on-one. So hopefully we'd be able to create something and to be able to help those families with that.
All right, Ms. Samuels.
I truly believe that education is salvation. And what I would like to see change is that every child who comes into the system receive an educational assessment and that it be incorporated into his or her plan, an educational plan, whatever that plan may be, and to secure that child on track with that educational plan. The other thing I would like to see happen is a development of a system of best practices. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are all over the country or various places in the country good systems that have been proven to work. The statistics show that they work, and I would like to see a system of best practices established in juvenile court.
All right, can everybody hear the candidates? No or yes? So? Have you been able to hear some of them? Okay. Candidates, I would put the microphone as close and speak up. Yes. Act like you have someone who's really acting up in front of you in the courtroom or something like that.
All right.
All right? Not me, though, okay? I behave. All right, next, this is a yes-no question, and then we'll follow it up with a more detailed question. But first, I just want a yes or no from everyone. The largest long-term study ever conducted in the United States shows that incarcerating children for any longer than 3 months actually increases the odds of recidivism post-release. So first, do you believe that research is valid? That incarcerating children for any longer than 3 months actually increases the odds of recidivism post-release? Do you believe that's valid research, Mr. Charbonnet?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Cook-Calvin?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Samuels?
Yes.
And finally, Ms. Carol Giltz.
Yes.
Y'all could hear that, right? Yeah. Maybe we should just stick with yes-no answers. I don't know. Okay, second part of the question. If it is valid, how should it impact the decision-making of juvenile judges, and how would it impact, more importantly, your decision-making? So you're all saying it's valid. How should it impact the decision-making of juvenile judges, and really more importantly, how would it impact your decision-making? And we'll start with Ms. Cook-Calvin. And again, speak up so they can hear you.
Well, the goal of my court would be to ensure that we are reducing recidivism. It's important that we look at other alternative ways to rehabilitate that offender, making sure that all of the services that that child needs is in place is the most important thing to reduce the recidivism.
But what are you going to, is it going to change your decision making when someone's in front of you?
No, each case you have to look at on a case-by-case basis based upon, there's so many variables. I mean, based upon the crime that the child has committed, based upon the background of that child, based upon the other resources that that child has in place, the family setting. It would take, I would look at a whole lot of other things in making that determination, but clearly that's an important factor. We don't want to incarcerate children. We've shown that that doesn't work. So we have to work on other alternative ways of rehabilitating that child.
Next, Ms. Roberts.
While the research may be validly, no, the research should not impact the judge's decision, nor would it ever impact mine. Each child is an individual, each case is individual, and yes, each child and each offense must be considered on a case-by-case basis. And my decision-making will depend on the facts as presented to me, that individual child, that child's background, and the needs of that particular child. So no, the research would not at all impact my decision-making.
Ms. Samuels?
The research will not impact my decision-making when it comes to a finding of innocence or guilt. Innocence or guilt is determined based on the facts and the law. The research will impact my decision-making in determining what to do with a convicted child once I've made that determination of guilt. What services then will be in place? However, a judge does not have discretion. In many cases, the law mandates incarceration. And in those instances, we must make sure that the children are getting the proper treatment in the facility that they need. As you have heard many times, failure to get that treatment, the quality treatment, educational treatment, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment is one of the things that increases recidivism. So logically, getting that treatment in place reduces recidivism. So it will affect my decision making. It's very important that we look at the individual child and what services must be put in place in order to help that child's brain develop into one where he can function as a normal and productive adult in society.
Ms. Carol Gills.
That information would be very helpful to me, being in the back of my mind. Alternatives to confinement would always be my first choice unless the safety of our community is at risk. If the safety of our community is at risk, then confinement, according to the statutes and the law, would be a choice of mine. Alternatives to confinement, however, would be my first choice, and using that data that you just gave would justify that. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Charbonnet.
That could not affect my decision as a judge. Once you put the robe on, you are bound by law to apply the law to the facts and follow the procedure you're supposed to. But knowing that, I would and am an absolute advocate for alternatives to incarceration. I read a report not long ago, I believe it was the National Health Institute, and in that report they talked about, I believe it's some county in California where wraparound programs actually work, and the data on that was amazing. One of the things that caught my eye, by the way, wraparound programs are community-based detention facilities where the special needs of the child are provided for. One of the things that stuck out, 50 to 100,000 is the cost of incarcerating a child. It could range anywhere in that range, depending upon the facility and how many kids are in it. In these community-based facilities where wraparound programs are, the cost is between $5,000 and $8,000. That's dramatic. I did not verify those figures, but they're in the report done by a National Health Institute. Even if they're just a little bit off, it's something we should look at. And I can't imagine any rehabilitation going on in many of our secure detention facilities for juveniles. We really must look at our entire juvenile justice system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charbonnet. Everybody can hear better now? They're better? Okay. Whatever volume you were at, just stay on that. That's perfect. Next question. Louisiana is one of only 10 states where the age of criminal jurisdiction is lower than the voting age. We prosecute every teenager as an adult at 17 and send children to criminal court as young as 14. Given what the last 30 years of research into adolescent development have shown us about the immaturity of the adolescent brain, do you think those are wise policies, and how can judges influence those policies? We'll begin with Ms. Roberts.
The legislature has deemed that certain offenses, when committed by juvenile, are deemed worthy of being prosecuted as an adult. I don't have an issue with certain offenses, if committed by a juvenile, being prosecuted as an adult. I do not believe that it is a judge's place to influence those situations. Those are things that are in the hands of the legislature and strictly in the purview of the legislature to make those decisions.
What offenses do you think can be prosecuted as an adult? You said some you're okay with.
Well, the legislation spells those out: murder, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, armed robbery, aggravated rape. They are spelled out in Louisiana Children's Code Articles 305A, 305B, in Louisiana Children's Code Article 857, in regards to 14-year-olds.
Okay. And just so on the record, you agree with all of those?
I do agree with Louisiana Children's Code Articles 305A, 305B, and 857.
Okay. Ms. Samuels, you're next.
It is the current law, and I do not believe that judges should legislate from the bench. But since your question was, do I believe that those laws are appropriate or even consistent with the research, clearly they are not. And I do not agree with them, but I do commit to follow them, as every judge must take an oath to follow the law. If the law were other than what it is, the children, it doesn't mean that they will not be sentenced to confinement. They can still be sentenced to confinement for the more serious offenses that were outlined by Ms. Roberts. But that law doesn't change the fact that they are still adolescents, and their brains are still going through the changes that adolescent brains go through. And as we heard earlier, they are still plastic and still moldable, and we can still affect those children by getting them into secured facilities and getting them the treatment, mental health treatment, educational treatment, substance abuse treatment, whatever it is that their assessment determines that they need. So no, I don't agree, but as a judge, we have to follow the law.
Next, Ms. Carol Giltz.
And I agree with everyone that we are mandated to follow the Children's Code. However, I do believe that there are some cases where children should be tried as an adult, especially if they're repeat offenders or habitual offenders, and they're a risk to our community. But those are case-by-case basis. There are many children who do commit heinous crimes that I feel would benefit from a different type of incarceration with children of their peers, and where services and support systems can be given to that child to make him a productive part of our society. Because once he's into that adult system, he's probably a lost cause.
Mr. Charbonnet.
I tend to agree with the comments of all of my opponents that have spoken before me. When you talk about crimes like first-degree murder, aggravated rape, I am hard-pressed to come up with a better solution than to try 15-year-olds as adults. Having said that, I do believe that there should be every effort to rehabilitate, educate, and try to reach a child that has gone down that path.
Ms. Cook-Calvin.
I also agree that we cannot legislate from the bench, that as a judge you have to follow the law as written. However, I do disagree with some of the laws in that there should be some more flexibility to allow for judicial discretion in certain cases. And right now, the way the laws are written, there's not much discretion for that. You have to follow the law as it is.
Okay. And just to point out, if I ask someone a follow-up question, it may be they're answering the question. I may just be curious about something they said and want to know a little more, so it's not necessarily that they haven't answered the question. I just maybe, I'm a curious guy. I'm sorry. All right. Next question. In New Orleans, 98% of arrested children are African American, even though African Americans only make up 60% of the Orleans Parish population. Research nationwide has shown that there are no racial differences in the frequency of self-reported delinquency among young people. What do you think is driving this stark racial disproportionality in New Orleans? And as a judge, what would you do to address this issue? And we'll start with Ms. Samuels.
Wow, that's a challenging question.
It is.
It is a challenging question.
And you're first.
Well, you know, I think that it's undisputed that there is some profiling in the stops that are made, and that has been documented not only throughout the city, but nationwide. And so I don't agree with that. And so, was your question just do I agree or not agree?
And what do you think is driving it? And then, as a judge, what would you do to address the issue?
Well, as a judge, you know,
So do you think racial profiling is driving it?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Clearly, there's something driving it. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. But as a judge, we are required to be fair, and we are required to look at the individual facts and look at the individual circumstances in every case. And so to address that, a judge has to be able to be wise, have experience, and be learned. And in all of those things, those qualities, I possess. And that's what a judge has to do, is to take the circumstances of the case as they come to the court.
Okay. Ms. Carol Gills.
I believe children learn what they live, and if they live in an environment where criminal activity and delinquency is part of their everyday world, then that's what they're going to engage in. However, there is a disparity with the number of our juveniles that go through our system. As a judge, I believe that we are limited in what we can do. However, we can get together with our NOPD system, talk to the police officers, let them know what our feelings are about the disparity of our youth being arrested, and get their ideas about it and why they think that these children are being arrested on a more frequent basis. However, I believe the judge is limited as far as how she or he can go out and change any system. We can only bring people together in our community, and that is our officers, who I have high regard for, and our prosecutors, and work together to find a solution together.
Mr. Charbonnet.
What we are talking about here are the root causes of crime. And all that information tells me is that our community, the African American community, does not have maybe the same access to quality education. The resources are not there. Employment opportunities are different. All of this factors into that. Now, what do we do to change that? I go back to my initial point. We must have a system of juvenile justice to address all of that. We look at what's going on in our school system. Why is there inferior education in some parts of town and not in others? Parenting. Many of our parents, we have children having children who don't have parenting skills. Imagine a parent university with a curriculum that is put together by experts and mental health experts and successful parents from around the country, where the entry point for this university can be not only when something bad has already happened in juvenile court, but it could be in the schools or in any of the state agencies. And we could have graduation, and maybe some of the graduate parents can come back and help others. These are the types of things that we need to do. This is what a real system would look like. And we really need to unite all of the parties, because I know firsthand the limitations of the city's budget. We are not likely.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cook Calvin.
I think the difference is the drug offenses. I think that African Americans, through the statistics, it's shown that African Americans are arrested more for those type of offenses, even though drug use across racial lines is the same. So I think that's what's driving it.
And finally, Ms. Roberts.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with some of Mr. Charbonnet and Ms. Carol Gill's answer that it is a root cause issue. It's a quality of life. It's a lack of education, a lack of many things in minority life in New Orleans, lack of educational system, lack of parenting, and judges do not really have the ability to affect disproportionate minority contact with police. You know, there are collaboratives that are going on currently within juvenile court, JDI trying to put groups together, trying to find causes for disproportionate minority contact. But unfortunately, until we improve our educational system, until we improve our resources, jobs, education, all those things, we will continue to have disproportionate minority contact.
You know, I want to follow up, and anyone can answer this question as much as they want, because I've heard a lot of people say, you know, that's not up to us, it's the legislature, we're only judges, we have to do the law. But the fact is, you know, whoever is the judge, you're a judge. You're a powerful person. There are judges, there's a judge here who spends time in Baton Rouge, pushing for law changes and things like that. You have power as a judge. You can push for things. So I think hiding behind, I'm a judge and I can, and maybe hiding behind is strong. Okay.
Not so much a situation of hiding behind me. You have to remember, if you're the person who's elected judge, you're not the person who's out there making the arrest. You're not the DA's office who's getting the police report, reviewing it for probable cause, making the determination on whether or not this kid who's a minority is going to have the charges that are filed against them. You're not the prosecutor who is going into court prosecuting that minority child who's been arrested by the police department. The only involvement you as the judge have in this child's life is to sit there, listen to the facts that are presented to you by the DA's office, by the defense attorney, and decide whether or not those facts presented, you can adjudicate this child delinquent. That's it. That's your role in this child's life as the judge in that particular moment. So you can't impact whether or not today that child is going to be picked up on a street
But I'm not
corner.
talking a case by case. I'm talking more big picture.
In the bigger picture, you can volunteer, yes, as a public servant.
Microphone.
In the bigger picture, as a human being, yes, you can go out there and volunteer in your churches, in your schools, and as a person you can impact. But as a judge, not really.
Anyone else have? But please, let's hold the applause, everybody. I'm asking you to please hold the applause. This is a forum, we're not cheering. It's not a Saints game. Yes.
I disagree in part with Ms. Roberts. I do think that as a judge you have a lot of influence and you can be an advocate for our children. You can go into the schools. You can meet with those principals. You can meet with those community folks. You can meet with those folks and try to come together and make those partnerships to change the tide of what's going on in our schools. I want to go back to when I was a young woman in school in an impoverished area in Holly Grove. And those teachers taught us about respect. We also had Officer Friendly. Where is he? He used to come to the schools to teach us about appropriateness and what you need to do when you interact with the police. And I think we need to get back to some of those basic things with our young people. Education is key. It has been the key for me. I finished from Ben Franklin. I went on to law school here at Tulane Law. And I've been practicing for 18 years, but I grew up in a poor area where all of these were factors. So we have to get back to those grassroots things to give our children empowerment, and as a judge, you can be an advocate for them.
Anybody else want to answer that? Yeah, I think everybody probably does.
Yeah,
and please, I got on y'all a little bit. Hold your applause, please. Yeah.
If I thought the only thing that I would be doing as juvenile court judge would be to listen to cases and move the docket, I would not be running for this seat. Now, I know the power of what a good system can do. I attended a very unique situation back in the late 60s. I attended St. Augustine. There were not many all-male, all-black private schools in the country. I think we were the only one back then. And I know firsthand how a system changed lives. There were schoolmates that came from all walks of life. The projects, foster care homes, some had juvenile records, but we all worked under that system, and I saw, and I am still friends with schoolmates who had lives turned around. So I would absolutely be an advocate to better the system that we have right now that clearly isn't working. And in order to do that, you must be the person who can restore confidence in the juvenile court system. People have to listen to you.
Let's limit these last two. Everybody's done about 60 seconds, so let's limit these last two to 60 seconds.
I feel that the judge, all the judges in juvenile court are powerful, And once we're off the bench, we can all decide as a group, what are the issues that we want to address? And as a group of judges, we can call on our NOPD. We can call in our community leaders. We can call our prosecutors in. We can all sit down in a forum like this and talk about the issues. Why are our kids being arrested so much? You know, what really is the underlying problem here? And is there something else that can be done? So I do agree with Mr. Zurich. As judges, we have a lot of power, and we can bring people together and talk about issues and identify ideas and solutions.
And just to clarify, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying you are able to. That's all. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong. Ms. Samuels.
Well, I think the initial question had to do with the disproportionate number of arrests. And so a judge does have to make the decision whether the arrest was a legitimate or illegitimate arrest. That's a decision that the judge must make. But that decision has to be made on the facts and circumstances of the case. Now, what a judge can do, as you made reference to, in a judge's power to be more involved in going to Baton Rouge and more involved in the community. And I believe that having some more police involvement with the local communities on a district level and getting to know on a personal level who is in that community, who lives in that community, police will then know, well, you know, that's Dewan, and I know Dewan is 14 and he's not supposed to be out at midnight. I think that that's an important part of it, as well as communities getting to know each other. And one of the ideas.
But what about you as a judge?
Well, one of the ideas that I had as a judge is promoting a, we have a crime watch system, and
I'll give you about 15 more seconds since I asked the phone.
The Night Out Against Crime, to incorporate kind of a children's night out against crime, so that we know who belongs in the neighborhood and who doesn't belong on a children and juvenile level.
Okay, finally, last question. Policymakers, including former Attorney General Eric Holder and Education Secretary Arne Duncan, have used the expression school-to-prison pipeline to describe the way that school discipline and arrests at school push youth, and especially minority youth, out of the classroom and into the courtroom. First, do you think there is such a thing as a school-to-prison pipeline? And second, if so, what will you as a judge do to respond to it? And we'll begin over here with Ms. Carol Gilds.
I know there is a school-to-prison pipeline. Our schools, and there are statistics on the number of suspensions and expulsions that are going on in our school systems today. And once you expel or suspend a child and the parent is not home, the child probably will become delinquent. And once he's delinquent, he will be picked up by our NOPD and he's in our system. So instead of suspending and expelling our children at the school level, we need to look and ask our educators, is there another way? Is there something else that can be done where you're not kicking the child out into the street and he has nothing to do? Also, after school programs. You all are probably not as old as I am, but as I was growing up, there was always after school. We need those things. These children need to learn how to read. They need to learn how to use the computer. So I know that's money that's involved, but if we use our tax dollars the way we should, I believe that we can use these wraparound services, as Mr. Charbonnet said, to keep our kids safe and not incarcerated.
Mr. Charbonnet.
Yes, I do believe there is a problem with, and there is such a thing as a pipeline to prison, and that's why in my opening answer I made reference to creating a system that brings all relevant parties together, especially the schools, because there may be something going on. Maybe there's a problem that's being handled by school security officer that should be handled by a counselor, and vice versa. But these are things that we must bring to the table to discuss, because unfortunately, once a child is in that pipeline, even in the beginning stages, it is very difficult to put it in reverse and get out on the short end. Usually, that child has to travel a long, dark journey, come out on the other end, and it always ends in human suffering.
Ms. Cook-Calvin.
Clearly, yes, there's a school-to-prison pipeline. If you look at the alarming rate of how our children are being expelled from school, how they're being suspended, it is an issue. But I think the answer to that is going to be parent accountability. Right now, I think it's important to have parent involvement. A lot of times, if that child has been expelled and the parent doesn't show up, if there's an issue with behavioral problems, the child needs special attention, special evaluation, and the parent isn't showing up for the evaluation, then that is something we're going to have to directly be involved with. I think as a court, we can get involved if the parent is being negligent. And so that's something we can look at in curtailing this problem, because as said previously, if the children are being expelled, they're not going to be able to be productive. Also, if the high school dropout rate, even if it's so high, that child is not going to be able to be productive. So we have to find ways to get parent involvement, but also, again, provide those services that are needed. After school programs, very important. Recreational programs, very important. We need all of those things to create productive youth.
Ms. Roberts.
I definitely wish the school handled the offenses that happened at the school differently. I don't believe that the school needs to call the police for every offense that takes place at the school. I don't believe that the school needs to expel the kids for every offense that happens at the school. The school systems definitely have a problem. They just don't seem to know what to do with themselves and how to handle the school-based offenses. It is definitely difficult, and they just don't seem to have the right answers.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Samuels.
There is a school-to-prison pipeline, and in order to address it, we have to address what it is and what causes it. As you heard earlier, the large percentage of children coming into the system have educational disabilities. They have mental health problems. Well, there's something called IDEA. That's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And these children can be covered under that act. And what that act does is it prohibits a school from expelling a child who has a disability, including a mental health disability. Well, some of the problem is that these children have not been identified as or designated as a child with a disability. And so I think that some of the education, the teachers and principals need more education on how to recognize a behavior in a child as opposed to, you know, he's just a misbehaving kid and he's disheveled and his shirt is untucked and he's late all the time and he doesn't pay attention, that these are actually symptoms, and that the child be assessed earlier on so that he can come under that umbrella of protection that the federal law, IDEA, gives that child. That's one of the ways to address it, and then we can get those services in place ahead of time before the child escalates and gets expelled from school.
All right, this was really interesting. Thank you. Now's the time to clap. Everybody can give them a round of applause. Y'all were great. We'd ask all the judges for all the candidates for criminal court to come on up now. We're going to switch out for a minute or two. So all the criminal court candidates come up, and thank you very much, juvenile candidates. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice meeting. Nice meeting. Y'all were very good. Nice meeting. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was juvenile, what we just did. That was juvenile, and now we're doing criminal. Yeah.
I think we should go ahead, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Everybody, can everybody hear me?
Let me get one. All right, everyone, we're gonna start the criminal court race now, so we'd like everybody to sit down and please kind of keep it down. We're going to get started with these introductions. Once again, hey, everyone in the back, if y'all want to talk, do you mind going outside so we can get started here? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brad Cousins, the Executive Director of Court Watch NOLA, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about Criminal District Court and our candidates this evening. Every day, hundreds of New Orleanians walk through the doors of the courthouse at Tulane and Broad. That's Orleans Parish Criminal District Court. If you have not done so already, it is a virtual certainty that you or a member of your family will at some point too. Maybe it will be as a juror doing your civic duty. Maybe it will be as a law enforcement officer waiting to testify. God forbid, but maybe it will be as a victim of crime seeking justice, or as a defendant with your liberty at stake. However it happens, in this city, virtually every family is touched by the criminal justice system, and that's why your vote in the race for criminal district court judgeships really matters. To give you a little bit of background, criminal district court has 13 elected judges who adjudicate adult felony cases. One, the magistrate judge, initially determines which defendants to release from jail and on what conditions, and handles some early appearances. Once the district attorney has charged a defendant with a felony, the case is randomly assigned to one of the 12 trial judges. They make rulings in disputes between the state and the defense. They encourage plea deals between the two sides, and they preside over trials. This year, only 2 of the 13 elected judgeships at criminal district court are being contested. That's sections D and section G. The magistrate judge and 10 of the 12 trial judges were reelected without opposition. I'm going to let the candidates explain their record and experience in more detail as they answer Lee's questions, but wanted to give you at least a very brief background for them. In alphabetical order by section, your candidates for the 2 contested judgeships are in section D, Graham Bosworth to my left. He's a former Orleans Parish Assistant District Attorney and currently a criminal defense attorney. Judge Frank Marullo, the incumbent, he's presided over section D since 1974 and sits on numerous community, city, and state boards and commissions. And Marie Williams, a former administrative law judge and legal aid attorney. For section G, the 2 candidates are Judge Paul Sens, who has been a judge handling misdemeanor crimes in municipal court for 18 years, and Byron Williams, a former assistant district attorney and assistant U.S. attorney who has also served as a judge pro tem in criminal court. So on behalf of all of the sponsors of tonight's forum, I want to thank the candidates for joining us. I know we're all eager to hear what you have to say, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it back over to Lee Zurich.
Thank you. For those who are joining us late, if you could just hold your applause, you'll all get to applaud at the end. And again, a great group of organizations that put this together tonight. They've come up with some very thoughtful questions, so hopefully all the candidates stick to the questions and not necessarily the broader message that you would like to get across. And just to make it clear for everyone as you're evaluating what you hear up here, the 3 candidates closer to me, you'll be deciding between one of them. So the 3 candidates closer to me, you'll get to vote for one of them, and then the 2 candidates on the other side. So just think of that as you're listening to your evaluations tonight. And if I can keep track of it, I'll try to kind of split things up that way as well too. So let's get right to the questions, and we'll begin with an efficiency question. The American Bar Association calls for all felony cases to be closed within 1 year of a defendant's arrest, and the Bureau of Justice Assistance has found that the routine granting of continuances results in case delays and backlogs. Meanwhile, organizations like the Metropolitan Crime Commission and Court Watch NOLA have often criticized criminal court for being inefficient. What are the most inefficient of the court's processes, and what would you do to improve them? So the heart of this question, what are the most inefficient of the court processes, and what would you do to improve them? We're having some trouble hearing in here. I don't know if you heard that, so please take the microphones off and get them as close to you and as loud as you want to be. We'll start with Mr. Bosworth in Section D over here.
In terms of inefficiency,
I would pull it close. Just take it. Yeah, there you go.
In terms of inefficiency, I think it really even starts with access to information in criminal court. Criminal court is incredibly outdated. If you are charged with a crime, if you're a witness to a crime, if you're a police officer in a case, you don't know anything other than you have a case set that day. You don't know how many other cases are on the docket. You have no way of accessing that information unless you actually go to the courthouse and look at a piece of paper that's pinned up on a door. You don't know. You walk into a section of court that could have 50, 60, 70 cases set all at once. That's an inefficient process. It's an inefficient system that leads to continuances because no one knows what's going on in any given court. There's disputes within the courthouse as to who even calls the docket, whether or not it's the judge or whether or not it's the DA's office. That leads to delays. That leads to confusion as to what case is going to be called and when. And then when you deal with the issues of continuances, there's no set structure in how those cases are continued. It's just a willy-nilly process where cases are pushed back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, in the hopes that in the next setting, when nobody really has any idea necessarily how many cases are going to be set that day either, we'll get to your case. To start the changes, you need to put together a publicly accessible calendar so everyone involved in every case on any given setting knows what's there. You need to create a slotted docket so that witnesses, police officers, defendants know exactly, or at least generally, what time their case is actually going to be called, so they're not spending their days sitting in court waiting for a case to be called.
Thank you very much. Judge Marullo?
Yes, I believe that we should have a master calendar docket. It certainly would help. But I disagree with the premise that we are inefficient in this area. If you judge apples with apples and oranges with oranges, and you look at Los Angeles, New York, New Orleans, or any other metropolitan city, you'll find we're the fastest court in the country, irrespective of technology, and I'm for technology. The McNaughton school case took 5 years to try in Los Angeles, 2 years of pretrial and 3 years of trial. O.J. Simpson took a year. That doesn't happen in New Orleans. We try cases, the longest case I've ever tried was 2 weeks, and it was a mass murder case. We are very efficient because of culture. We're more efficient in civil litigation and in criminal litigation than any metropolitan city in the country.
Are there studies that back that up?
Yeah, there's studies that back it up.
Okay.
You can start off with the Organization of State Courts. We're the fastest criminal court in the country.
Ms. Williams.
The problems with criminal district court today, that's the reason why I'm running for judge. It is inefficient, unorganized, the dockets are not prepared, the district attorney needs to work with the police officers, and I'm sorry, there are many cases, small cases, big cases that are continued and continued year after year and time after time. There are many times I've gone to court just for a case, and I was told it was not prepared. For one particular case I've been waiting for, a minor incident, over a year. It took me just to get the police report just to get the evidence, just to get the file. So the courts need to be organized, the DAs need to work with the police officers, and the judge needs to have a handle on the case dockets. Another thing, when I was a judge doing administrative law, I never would have 30 judges set a time to all come at 9 o'clock in the morning. When you come at 9 o'clock in the morning, set about 30 attorneys, no one knows who goes first. So what I would do, and what I did and what was organized, make a slot for each attorney, give them 10 minutes, 15 minutes to hear their case, and I would have them in order. There needs to be organization, there needs to be order in the courts, and I'm sorry, many of these cases, and I'm talking about small time offenses, are continued for years, and it's unacceptable.
Okay, now we're going to go to Section G, and Judge Sens.
Part of this problem is discipline, and discipline of the judge and discipline of the people who appear before him. I happen presently to sit on the municipal court. We have the largest criminal docket in the state of Louisiana. We also have the shortest docket. And part of that reason is because you have to make sure that the people who are appearing before you every day are prepared, that they know what is expected of them. We start court at 8 o'clock in the morning. We take care of preliminary matters first. Once those preliminary matters are finished, we go to motions, pre-trials, and then at that time we get ready to do our trials if our trials are ready to go. But we know, because we work with both the defense attorneys and we work with both the prosecutors to know what cases are primed, what cases are set, and which ones are likely to go. So everyone knows ahead of time that this is what is expected of you. You need to be prepared. And actually, the criminal court rules say that you only get a continuance for cause. You need to stick to that. You need to make sure that the reason people are asking for continuance is just reasons. In my practice, in my court, each side gets one continuance for cause, and if it's not ready, then they must be ready to go to trial. That's why in the state of Louisiana, I have the shortest docket in the state of Louisiana. Another issue here is funding, and another issue is information sharing. We do not have technology. It's a funding issue. We spend $140 million plus on a police department. We spend less than $1 million of our general fund in criminal district court.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Again, this question really is something that should be centered on the reports that we hear from the Metropolitan Crime Commission that talks about the efficiency of the criminal district court. The fact of the matter is that the Metropolitan Crime Commission report actually addressed the bottom tier of the court system. And that problem is addressed as it relates to the management of the court's docket as well as the culture of continuances. The reason why that is the case is because there's no leadership as it relates to each individual court in managing their docket, at the same time allowing the various attorneys to have unnecessary continuances. What I would submit is that we need to have advanced scheduling. We need to right now have a relationship with the district attorney, the sheriff's office, the probation and parole, the police department, and the various entities over at criminal district court to make sure that everyone understand the scheduling of the judges, understand when the cases will be heard, when witnesses will be subpoenaed, and when a police officer are required. We can look at best practices from the Metropolitan Crime Commission report to address a number of the inefficiencies at criminal district court and resolve those almost immediately.
All right, can everybody hear? Two? Okay, good. Next question. Procedural fairness is a judicial best practice focused on making courts more respectful, understanding, and neutral while ensuring that all parties before the court have the chance to tell their story. The American Judges Association says that procedural fairness is the critical element in public perception and satisfaction with the court system, and that it can lead to lower recidivism rates and higher rates of compliance with court orders. What does procedural fairness mean to you in the criminal court context, and what will you do to bring greater procedural fairness to criminal district court? We'll begin with Judge Marullo.
When you're a judge, you got to pay attention to 4 amendments to the United States Constitution. It's the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 8th. and they represent different parts of our system. The fourth is one that's litigated at Touro and Broad almost every day, and that's motions to suppress or probable cause, because the policeman didn't have a right to do what he did, or the evidence was obtained with being wrongfully obtained. So your pretrial practice is the big part of giving justice. Motions to suppress evidence, motions to suppress statements, and probable cause. Also the Eighth Amendment, that a bond fits the crime. That's procedural justice. And then when you go to the trial, you got to make sure that the defendant gets a fair trial. That's the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And that's what we do every day. I don't think that any judge on my bench, including myself, doesn't allow the defendant to have those motions, so he's tried fairly under the Sixth Amendment.
Thank you, Judge Marullo. Ms. Williams.
Okay, I just want to address, as a defense attorney and representing many indigent clients and legal cases pro bono and with legal aid, I disagree with some of the people on the panel. It is not the defense attorneys who are not prepared. We are prepared to go to court. Many times when we go to court, and I'm sure that many of the court watchers can say, sometimes the district attorney's office is
We'll
not...
answer the question about procedural fairness, though.
Oh, that's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
About procedural fairness. They're not prepared, so I don't... That is, to me, procedural fairness. When you go to court and there is no fairness, because the defense attorneys just have to handle and take anything that the DAs do. And I think that it would be fair as a judge to give everyone the opportunity to handle their cases in a mannerly time, in an orderly time, within fashion, within a time allowed. And I'm a judge, I will be a judge who will be fair, who will give each person an opportunity, even the defendants, give respect. And that's another thing. The judge needs to give respect, not only fairness to the attorneys, but to the people who come before them in the courtroom. So many times I have seen judges be disrespectful to just lay people like yourself sitting in the audience. And I think that it's unfair. So fairness comes with respect. Fairness comes with turning over documents, handling...
Thank you very
documents.
much. Let's keep it in Section D with Mr. Bosworth.
For me, I believe equal access to justice, where every constitutional right is the answer to the question. And this goes back to the efficiency issue of criminal district court. With all due respect to my opponent, criminal district court is not efficient. I'd invite anyone in this room to go to criminal district court on any morning and sit through the proceedings the same way Court Watch NOLA does and watch what happens. It is not an efficient system. We have a backlog of cases. We have attorneys, both prosecutors and defendants, who can't keep up with the cases that are called during any section, during any given day. And as a result, we have judges who participate in a system that, in my belief and estimation, denies individuals their constitutional rights. Any individual who's charged with a crime in criminal district court has the right to remain silent and force the DA to prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Judges get involved in plea negotiations and tell individuals, I want this case off my docket. If you plead today, I'll give you probation, but if you go to trial, you're going to get jail time. That is not equal access to justice, and that is a ramification of an ineffective system at criminal district court.
Judge Sens, Section G.
Procedural fairness, I think, means that you allow both sides to be... The fair and impartial administration of justice is what is important in the criminal justice system. So you need to be fair to both sides. I think in some respects it's weighted toward the prosecution, but the judge is the arbiter. The judge is the person who sits there and makes the decision to make sure that he is being fair, that the prosecution is not being given undue advantage. And so when you go through this, when you do pretrials, if you have a pretrial order, you know in discovery issues that these matters are handled, that the prosecution is giving to the defense attorneys the necessary information they need to prepare their case. So the judge is the one who sits there and has to make that decision. And I have done that for the last 18 years. I make sure that the prosecution is upfront and discloses to the defense attorneys those things that need to be done so that procedural fairness is protected.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Procedural fairness could easily be demonstrated if you look at some of the things that are done in the federal system. The fact of the matter is, we just must follow the rules of the road. From my experience in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the reason why procedural fairness is clearly demonstrated by the courts is because everyone understands the rules and the parameters and how they are to conduct themselves. The issue at state court is because there are 12, 13 different sections that operate independently of each other. If there's some leadership at the criminal district court to make sure that en banc, the judges follow their own governance model, that they will be able to give the procedural fairness that each and every defendant is due under the Constitution. The fact of the matter is, in criminal district court, there are efficient judges. There are a number of inefficient judges, and because of that, it weighs down the public confidence in the way procedural fairness is followed.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we're going to go talk about accountability. Government organizations across the country are becoming more transparent and accountable by creating websites or dashboards that showcase the organization's performance goals and progress towards these goals. What can criminal district court do on its own initiative to increase public trust? And will you commit to regularly providing the public with measurable and objective information regarding the efficiency and effectiveness of each section of court? Begin with Ms. Williams.
The problem with that, one thing that I think that the community should be aware of what goes on in criminal court, district court on a daily basis. They should be able to know which judge is ruling how the judge is ruling, what are the judge's opinion on domestic violence, on small crimes, big crimes, but the problem is that money. And if maybe we would curb the money in the criminal justice system, then we could help nonprofit organizations such as the Crime Watchers who put out press releases or things. I think that there should be some type of press release, but right now, the only thing that they could do is put it on the website. But everyone doesn't know about the website, so how do you do it? How do you market it? So that's something that needs to be explored, I think, between the judges, because the public needs to know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. The only thing they know, they hear about the crime that happens on television. They hear about the crime, and then they'll hear about maybe a judge getting removed from the bench, but they don't know what's going on until they hear about a scandal that comes out in the newspaper. So as far as, I totally believe that there should be some type of accountability to the system, to the public, and that a press release should be done on a regular basis to the public, so they should know what each judge is doing and what each judge's rating is on the bench.
Mr. Bosworth.
I think part of the answer to that question is the question itself. I think a section of court can put together its own website. Any person here in this room today could go home tonight and set up a website and publish a calendar. There's no reason criminal district court can't do the exact same thing. A judge can have a publicly accessible calendar for the population of the city to go to, access, and determine what's set on any given day. Moreover, a section of court can keep regular office hours, 8:30 to 4:30, every single working day, so that the public has access to the courtroom. That doesn't happen in criminal court now. You can show up at criminal district court at 1 in the afternoon, and the courtroom's closed. There's no one there. That is not transparency. That is not access to the public. Moreover, the judiciary should be more involved in the public. There's no reason judges have to hide behind their robes and not interact with the public, not come to forums, not just during elections, but during any given month of any given year, so that they can interact with the public, have the public ask questions of them generally about their approaches, Judges can't talk about specific cases, but they can talk about their approaches, why things are happening, and they can actually get input from the community on how their decisions and how their actions are affecting the community. Those are 3 steps that need to happen in criminal district court in order to improve transparency and ensure that the city of New Orleans trusts their judges.
So you're saying at the very least your section, if elected, you would have your own website?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. Judge Marullo.
Well, I think we're pretty transparent. I mean, all the news organizations come to the criminal court, they watch the trials, they report it in the newspaper, they report it on television. That's pretty transparent. And I've been involved with the criminal court for a long, long time. I was started in the legislature. When I started becoming a criminal court judge, I never left the legislature. I am there every year, every semester of the legislature, to make sure that they have the knowledge of how to, that they won't hurt the system. I'm there for every criminal bill. I'm there for all the financial bills that affect the criminal district court. That's pretty transparent. I testify numerous times every year, and I belong to many, many legal organizations that also are transparent to the public.
Judge Sens.
The transparency issue, and really it's a technology issue. It's a technology issue because I've been to many courts around the United States where the dockets are available to anyone through the internet, each judge, each division. A lot of times if you go to places, when you walk into the court, they're telling you walk into court what division is, what case is set, what time it's set for. So it really is, for this community, a time for us to sit back and really look at the priorities that we have in the criminal justice system. I have been a proponent for a long time that we need to activate the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. We have a council that is set up now that is supposed to look at the criminal justice system in a systemic approach. But what we're doing now is really using it as a funding pass-through. We go into a meeting, we sit at the table, we make a decision really that's made for you already by the administration. This is where the money's going, and everybody gets up and walks out. We should be doing this on a monthly basis with the real players in the criminal justice system saying, from the police department, the sheriff's department, criminal court, municipal court, juvenile court, what are our priorities? What do we need to do? And these are one of them. Technology is one, which we're trying with an crisis system that we're trying to work with now, but it needs to be expanded, and we need to look at this really as a funding priority.
Mr. Williams.
Accountability is critical to a healthy judicial system, and I support accountability in all forms and measures that can be demonstrated at criminal district court. Again, I refer to the Metropolitan Crime Commission report, which talks about judicial efficiency and accountability. Again, we can look at the lower tier judges and understand that until the court en banc decide to sit down and agree to some measures in which they all can explain to the public exactly what they do and how they do it, we will never receive the public confidence and trust that we deserve. The measures are there. We do not have to get into a finger-pointing situation when it comes to accountability because the community deserves it. The judges should not be afraid to present it to the community. But we should also understand that when the Metropolitan Crime Commission report comes out, it is not to cite or to point out any judge as being deficient or being bad in his work product. What we should look at is the best practices of the top tier judges in the Metropolitan Crime Commission report, see how they measure the metrics for their accountability, and use that as the best practices so that the public can know exactly what's going on and the judges are not afraid to answer those questions.
All right, thank you. Next, the American Bar Association believes that judges should be evaluated on their punctuality, and Court Watch NOLA has pointed out that some sections of court regularly start as much as an hour late, wasting the time of the public servants, law enforcement officers, and members of the public who are there. So, what are your views on that and in the future? And we'll begin with Judge Sens.
Well, I'm proud to say that, again, I'm on the court in the state of Louisiana that has the largest criminal docket. My 4 judges on my court, in fact, I helped with the district attorney's transition of over 7,000 cases from criminal court to 13 judges of criminal court to municipal court. And we have, by far, the most efficient dockets in the state of Louisiana, and I happen to have the most efficient docket of the 4 judges there. So punctuality is very important. Starting work at 8 o'clock, I start work at 8 o'clock. I get on the bench, like I said earlier, I'm punctual. I make sure that people are also punctual, that they're coming, and we handle, again, those preliminary matters first. So if it's a matter of work, we have the largest docket. We have the shortest from institution to resolution in the state of Louisiana. I'm happy and proud to say that of that court, I'm the most, mine is the shortest docket, the quickest docket. And again, it's discipline. It's you being disciplined as the jurist, and also having the people who appear before you know what's expected of them and disciplining them and making sure they are upheld to the same standard. And that also applies to your staff, to make sure they're courteous, efficient, and work hard.
Mr. Williams?
As it relates to the court time on the bench, I clearly would follow the model of retired Judge Dennis Waldron. I truly believe, from my experiences at the United States Attorney's Office as well as serving on the bench at Criminal District Court, that until the public, the litigants, can understand and could see that judges will start court on time, again, we lose confidence in the system. The fact of the matter is, judges like Dennis Waldron would start early, as I did when I was on the criminal court bench. At federal court, we started court early, we started on time, and again, it's about the rules of engagement. If the court decides to conduct themselves in a consistent, disciplined manner in which all the litigants, including the district attorney, the sheriff's office, the public defenders, private attorneys, will understand that there are consequences for not being on time, we will have a more efficient and punctual court. One of the things that I think we all should demonstrate to the public is the fact of the matter is that when we do get on the bench, after a period of time when our docket is complete, there are opportunities for us to go out and engage the community to make sure that they understand that the work that we do is efficient, is effective, and is transparent and accountable to all the citizens of New Orleans.
Mr. Bosworth. Again, this question is on punctuality.
Obviously, punctuality is imperative. It helps promote efficiency, and it also helps promote trust in our judiciary. And there's no excuse why any judge can't take the bench at the time they're supposed to. And this goes back to technology. I mean, there are obviously instances where maybe a judge is required to go to a meeting in Baton Rouge, or maybe he has a conference that's set up that he can't get to. If you have the technological capacity in place, if you have the ability to communicate with the public, if you have transparency, you let them know. You let them know, while I normally start court at 9 a.m., today it's going to start at 10. Today it's going to start at 11. That way, attorneys aren't wasting their time. Police officers aren't wasting their time. Witnesses who come in order to participate in our criminal justice system, who are imperative cogs in our criminal justice system, aren't being taken advantage of. We need to ensure that we are respecting the time of the people who show up in our criminal justice system. And again, this is why establishing new technology and making sure that we are communicating with the public is imperative in order to ensure that judges are always communicating and that no one is left in the dark.
Judge Marullo?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, in the sense that if you want to move a case and you want to move many cases as fast as you can, which you do, and what I do normally, I get there in the morning, and when I start seeing the lawyers who have the cases before me, pre-trying the issues, making sure that we got the issues that we're going to have to try. And a lot of times that causes people to plead guilty or resolve it in some other way, and it shortens the time and doesn't burden the jurors staying there a long time. Years ago, we even tried to alter the system where we would come in at different hours, because if you all came in at the same time and you had a heavy jury day where you had many jurors going to be, if you start pulling the jurors all at one time, you couldn't satisfy the panel. So it's more complicated than it's made out to be. Yes, I think the judges ought to get there early in the morning. I get there 8:30 in the morning. But my style is I pre-try everything on that day, so it shortens the docket. Because sometimes you wind up at 11, 12 o'clock at night trying jury trials where you can prevent that and prevent the inconvenience of the jurors by pre-trying cases in the morning.
But let me follow that up, Judge Marula, because I understand what you're getting at, but that you do contrast that what Mr. Williams said, and I've been in Judge Waldron's courtroom before, and he was very punctual. So what is the difference?
I will say that Judge Waldron's the most punctual person I've met in my entire life.
You're probably right about that.
And he used to practice law before me.
But you get my question. You're saying one philosophy, yet a judge, whether he is punctual or not, he has another philosophy, and he's able to pull that off that way.
All of us are different. Every one of us have a different philosophy. I find that you can be more expedient but getting the job done if you can isolate the issues in controversy and keep from having a jury trial.
Okay, Ms. Williams.
As an administrative law judge, I was always punctual. I always came to court and to work on time, 30 minutes earlier than I had to be. And I just want to say, as a mother, I get up at 6 o'clock every morning. I have 2 kids, and my kids have to be at school, one at 8, one at 8:15. So after that, I'd go straight into the office, so I was always in the office before 9 o'clock in the morning. So I do believe in being punctual. I teach my children to be punctual. I'm a very punctual person. Even tonight, we came, although this started at 6:30, we were here about between 5:30 and 5:45. I just came early because I like to come early to events, to meet people, and I think that everyone should be punctual, and I will make sure that when I come to court, my court will be punctual. I will be there on time. I will be there early. And I think that it's also important to go to court on time and early to look over your docket, because too often I find that when you get there, judges have no clue of what's going on, who you are, what's going on that day. So it gives me the opportunity to just look over the cases and see what I have on the docket that day before me. So I do believe in punctuality.
Okay, I just want one number here from each of you. You know, we've heard some people say there are too many judges, there may be not enough. You know, some of you say there are inefficiencies if you believe it was run differently. How many judges do you think criminal court needs? Right now there are 12. How many judges do you think criminal court needs? We'll just start from this end. Mr. Bosworth. One number.
I'm not sure if it's necessarily a fair question. I would say with the infrastructure that exists now, you need all the judges that are there. If you're actually
if it's running the way you think it should run, how many?
7.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we need
Judge Marula.
I think you need every judge that's on the bench. You got to, you know, we try the most murder trials in the state, the most jury trials in the state.
Okay, I'm trying to limit this because I want to get one up, but you can one more quick point you can make.
Well, I just think that the population of the city of New Orleans is not as high as it was. The population is growing. You can see the largest capital improvement in the United States being built here. And I wouldn't be doing away with judges before you see what the workload is.
Ms. Williams?
I think that there needs to be 13 judges. I agree.
So you need more. Okay.
No, it's fine.
A third with the magistrate. Okay. Judge Sens?
I think there should be 12 judges. 12 judges on the bench. I think it's necessary with the complexity of the cases that are held at criminal district court.
Okay. Mr. Williams?
Unfortunately, I have to agree. You need all the judges that are presently at criminal district court due to the caseload and the complexity of the cases that are heard before them.
Okay. Yes or no question. Would you commit to undergoing regular judicial performance evaluations and making the results of these evaluations public, as is required of judges in many states? We'll start on the other end. Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Okay. That's all we need. Yes or no? Judge
Yes.
Sens?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Judge Marullo?
Yes.
Mr. Bosworth?
Yes.
All right. And our final question is this. Why do you want to be a criminal court judge? Why should people vote for you instead of for your opponent? We'll begin with Judge Marullo.
Well, I've been there a long time. I'm there a long time.
Can y'all hear him? Is the microphone on?
I've been there a long time and I've enjoyed the work. I like helping people. I think that the great majority of the people that are put in jail that don't have to go to jail because of mandatory sentences. One thing I'd like to do when I'm elected is to fight the mandatory sentence and bring back discretion to the court. The judge should be the umpire. The defendant should have a defense attorney. The state should be protected by the district attorney. But I think the judge should have full discretion in sentencing, and that will not only be a social good, it'll also be a financial good, because we're spending a lot of money incarcerating people that we don't have to, and we can handle it a different way. You know, there's intensive probation, there's drug courts, there's all of those things that we can use, the tools, to not incarcerate. And once you incarcerate, all you do is educate criminally those criminals.
Okay, Ms. Williams.
I'm running for judge because I have the experience, I have the background, I have been a judge. I know what it takes to run an efficient courtroom. I'm a person for change. I think that we need to start electing new, young, energetic people who want to do the job, who want to come to work, who want to see a change in this city. What's working right now is not things that are in the city, it's not working. So we need to elect people who want to do the job. I have this energy, I have the efficiency, I have the know-how and the fairness. I do not believe in corruption, I do not believe in back deals, I do not believe in getting a job on who you know. I believe in getting on a job on your experience. And I'm running because I have that experience. I believe in justice. I believe in fairness. And if you look at my push card, my background shows that I've worked in civil rights, fair housing, for legal aid, pro bono, for the poor, for people who cannot afford attorneys. And that's why I'm running for judge, because this city, most of the people who come before criminal court are not rich. They're poor people who need help. And I'm running because we need someone who is going to care not just about the people who can pay, but those who can't. Thank you.
Mr. Bosworth.
I'm running for judge because after working as both a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, I've become incredibly frustrated with our criminal justice system. It is a system that does not function well. It is a system riddled with inadequacies, that does not offer equal access to justice. It's a system that's outdated. It's a system that's outdated not just in terms of its technology, but also in terms of its attitudes. It's a system that unfortunately incarcerates a disproportionately large number of our city. We have the highest incarceration rate in the world. We spend $800 million a year incarcerating people in Louisiana. We spend so much money and put so many people in jail that the people who get 5-6-year sentences, the people who we are forced to put in jail for small periods of time, they don't get access to drug treatment. They don't get access to education. They don't get access to job training. They don't get access to mental health evaluations. These are individuals who come back to our city with nothing other than a conviction and incarceration, and the stigma precludes them from getting jobs, it precludes them from becoming members of our society, it precludes them from getting education, and as a result we have the highest recidivism rate in the country. We need individuals who understand that. I've worked on the Sentencing Commission, I'm on the Bar Association's Criminal Justice Committee, I've been co-chair of their Incarceration Reduction and Reform Subcommittee. We need to reinvest in our courthouse, update its technology, make sure everyone has equal access to justice.
Thank you very much. Judge Sens.
I believe that the city of New Orleans is in the second battle for the city of New Orleans, and this is over violent crime. And I think the question before you today is, who is the best candidate here to help you in that fight? On one hand, you have a person who's gone from job to job, who was the chief of screening in the most dysfunctional district attorney's office in the history of the city of New Orleans. His DA had to resign because they couldn't screen cases and murderers were being released. 6 months as a pro tem, where his docket expanded and the backlog grew. 6 months with the Judicial Commission, and then out of the criminal justice system. On the other hand, you have a veteran, a 32-year veteran of criminal justice who served in the criminal justice system for the last 32 years daily. A judge who runs the most efficient section of the most efficient court in Orleans Parish, handling more criminal cases than any other court in the state of Louisiana. 10 years as a public defender, handling thousands of cases for the most dispossessed in our community. An assistant attorney general, executive assistant to the mayor overseeing the criminal justice system for him. Now 18 years as a judge, presiding over 200,000 cases, and helping the transfer of 70% of the criminal court's docket, the 13 judges of criminal court, to the 4 judges of municipal court. I've been a person who's responsible for establishing innovative programs which have saved the city millions of dollars, and I have implemented specialty courts which have changed
Thank you very
people's
much. Mr. Williams.
First of all, I don't know who my opponent was talking about, because the fact of the matter is this is clearly an easy choice for the citizens of New Orleans. As I represent the change in culture that we're trying to get away from the old politicians who use their office as their own personal kingdom, who treat the citizens of New Orleans with contempt in everything that they do. The fact of the matter is there are 4 reasons why I know I should be the judge in Criminal District Court Section G. First of all, I'm motivated because I support fairness, efficiency, and judicial responsibilities. I understand that because as special counsel to the Judiciary Commission of the Supreme Court, I investigated and prosecuted judges for judicial misconduct. I know what good judges do and I know what bad judges do. I also am committed to hard work. I'm committed to hard work with no appearance of impropriety, as the canons reflect that you lose the confidence in the public when you have impropriety on behalf of judges and appearance of impropriety. The public is sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I have the vision. I have the vision to engage the community more with vigor and not say that I was just a public servant, but a community servant. We need individuals on the bench that can engage the community such that the community can look at them as a mentor and as a role model for where the new New Orleans wants to go. And finally, I'm prepared. I am the only person in this race that has actually done work in the criminal justice system. I've been a judge.
Thank you very much. All right, let's give a round of applause to our candidates tonight. Thank you all very much. We have some closing comments. Everybody, hold on one second. We're not totally done, but thank you all very much. And before you go, just some closing remarks. A great evening here tonight. Very educational for us all. Thank you.
How you doing, everyone? Good evening. My name is Erica Makandua-Diggs. I'm the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater New Orleans. I just wanted to pop up here at the end to say thank you so much for joining us on behalf of all of my co-sponsors. You see the list is on the bottom of your program. We have to give them a round of applause. It is never easy. It is never easy organizing and putting on events like this. So I have to say thank you to all of my colleagues. I want to thank Touro Synagogue for being our gracious host, Lee Zurich for being our phenomenal moderator, and WYES for agreeing to broadcast this important conversation. To the candidates, thank you for offering yourselves for service. We know that this is no easy task, but it is extremely important to our community. Juvenile and criminal court are probably the most important courts right now in the city because of our challenges with public safety. So we thank you for offering yourselves up for service. To the attendees tonight, thank you for your civic engagement. We must openly and honestly receive all of the information that we have heard tonight and decide on who we think is best to serve. Most importantly, what I want to convey to you all is the importance of voting. It is not okay for us to just take ourselves to the polls. There are very critical races and issues on the ballot this year. Please make sure you take your family members, take the seniors in your community, your neighbors, get them out to the poll, help them understand the importance of their civic participation, help them understand the issues that are at stake, help them understand the ballot if they so need help, but make sure that they vote. Early voting is open until October 28th. If not, we would love to see you at your polling place on November 4th. So again, thank you so much and have a wonderful night.